Hello friends, welcome to the next episode of How Did I Get Here, a series where I talk about the last 5 years of my life being homeless and traveling across the country. So today we're going to talk about New Mexico and Arizona. But before we get to that, two stories I want to tell from Texas that I totally forgot to include in the last video. And they're very short stories, they're also very cute stories. So the first one I want to talk about is the Bobcat. So I was just off like a back road in Texas, and I decided to sit down for a few minutes, just take a break. While I'm sitting down, I look over, and there's a Bobcat just sitting right next to me. And I have never really experienced Bobcats. I kind of stood up. He backed away a little bit, and I don't know, he just kind of chilled there for like a minute or two. And then I decided to leave, and he ran off. I thought that was really adorable. And then the second story, which is equally as adorable, I was walking in a trail. I was walking through a trail in Texas. Uh, this was in eastern Texas, and it wasn't really deserty. There was trees all around me, nice dirt trail, and it's nighttime. I do a lot of night hiking. I really love night hiking. It's very meditation. The word meditation comes to mind. And I'm walking on this trail, and I hear some rustling in, the bushes that's around me. And all of a sudden, a little tiny armadillo pops out, and that's fun. And this armadillo, I continue walking, this armadillo, little baby armadillo, just starts walking beside me for a good 5 minutes. I thought I was going to have to adopt an armadillo there. He would not leave my side. And then eventually, he kind of veered off into the woods, and I never saw him again. But that was adorable. Yeah, I remembered those two stories earlier, and I just wanted to include them because good vibes, I had a lot more good things happen to me while on my little journey than bad things. So now let's get into New Mexico. Good old New Mexico. I didn't have any big problems in New Mexico, really. Got into New Mexico, there was this nice, I remember this nice Roadrunner statue that was made out of like old scrap metal. It was at an old rest stop. That was really cool. I remember that. And then, very shortly after getting into New Mexico, I got hit with snow, which I did not know was a thing. I had always thought New Mexico was, well, warm and you don't get snow. But no, good 3 inches of snow. I was under a bridge. I didn't walk in the snow. I just kind of hung out there for like 2 days. And, eventually the snow melted and I continued on. But yeah, that was an experience. Didn't know it snowed in New Mexico. And I wasn't up in like the mountains or anything. I know New Mexico has a lot of mountains and stuff where it does get very cold. It does snow a lot. I wasn't. I was on like the south part, like the southeastern part of New Mexico. Speaking of being on the southeastern part of New Mexico, I was very close to the border. And oh my goodness, the amount of hiking gear I came across and even picked up was astounding. So my understanding is this. When people jump the border, so normally like people, they cross over into America illegally and they just ditch all their stuff. They'll bring like just like a really small, like 20-liter backpack or so. They'll come across the border, they'll ditch everything they have, and then, they'll jump in a van or a car and that'll take them to their destination. So while walking close to the border, I would stumble upon, jackets and backpacks and just all manner of things like that. And I remember the pants as well. I remember I took a pair of pants and a jacket because, they had like a lot of pockets. They were, the best way to describe it is very cheap tactical gear. It just had loads of pockets everywhere, but it wasn't like expensive gear. So I actually picked up some gear from that. And that's about all that really happened in New Mexico. New Mexico and Arizona, not a lot happened, mainly because I was walking the interstates the entire way. There wasn't really any trails that went east-west that I was aware of. And I was in the southern part, and I mainly just stayed on the highways. Ran into Border Patrol a few times, never had any problems with them. So I get into Arizona, and at this point, Arizona is starting to heat up significantly. First thing I did was I ditched my sleeping bag. I had a nice big mummy sleeping bag. Wasn't expensive. It was like $30 at Walmart. I ended up ditching that because it got so hot at night. Like I just couldn't use it. So I just ditched my sleeping bag and I opted for like an actual sleeping bag liner. And that's all I used because, I didn't want to just have nothing and have, you know, all of the bugs crawling on me all the time. So, I still had some protection from that. One thing I remember, I was asleep. I was out in the middle of the desert, probably, a mile off the highway or something. And I went to sleep and I woke up. And when I went to pack up, I lift up my backpack and there's like two scorpions that just dart out. Two scorpions just sleeping underneath me, underneath my head the entire night because I use my backpack as a pillow. So that was the thing. I don't know if they're venomous or what. I don't know anything about scorpions. Scorpions are one of those things I've never had to experience. But from there on, I had to be a little careful with them to make sure. Every morning, check my boots, which I was used to over on the East Coast because, you always check your boots for like spiders and stuff. But now I got to check my boots for scorpions whenever I wake up. Another thing happened in Arizona, which I did not know was a thing. I learned a lot in Arizona and New Mexico. I was walking the railroad tracks for some reason. I guess it was a shortcut. And it started to hail. It was, like this nice warm day, a hot day, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, hail. And there were no trees around. So basically what I did was I had a trekking pole and I just kind of jerry-rigged my tarp and my trekking pole to make like a tent really quickly and just sat there, and the hail only lasted like maybe 10 minutes, if that. And I just kind of stayed under there. And it wasn't huge hail. It wasn't, golf ball size hail that would have killed me if it would have hit me. It was very tiny. Yeah, it was still a thing. And then some other things that happened. While in Arizona, I remember I got off the highway to walk some back roads because I just wanted to walk some back roads, And it was 110 degrees at this point. We're midsummer. And I remember I took a break under a bridge. It was a small little bridge. And there's just water everywhere under the bridge, like bottled water, which I'm assuming is for, illegals who are crossing. People leave like gallon jugs of water. Yeah, no, it was just water. It had aqua on it. I don't trust random bottles of water just under a bridge. So I personally didn't drink it. But, providing it was, a good thing, it was a well-intentioned bottle of water. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I always carried so much water with me. Is that a snake? I think I may have a rattlesnake close to me. And we'll find out. So yeah, let's talk about the Arizona heat because that was crazy. So yeah, it got up to well over 100 degrees on a daily basis. I was in the south part of Arizona. First thing I learned early on, polyester or nylon clothing is a must. I didn't wear any cotton. No, I ditched all my wool socks and everything. I got, I think it was polyester socks. I got like a polyester fishing shirt similar to this. And that helped. It's definitely better than cotton. Clearly better than wool. I would have died if I would have kept my wool stuff. And also, I got something similar to this, which basically you get it really wet and you put it on and the evaporation cools you down. Works amazing. In Florida, I use this every day. It's great. Arizona probably saved my life a few times. And yeah, that was essentially New Mexico and Arizona. As I said, nothing major happened in those states. In fact, I think they were probably the only two states I didn't pick up any work or anything. I just hustled through them. And then I got into Yuma, Arizona. And from Yuma, Arizona, I got into California. So the next video on California is going to be tomorrow. But, It's probably going to be broken up into 2 videos. So like one video tomorrow, one video the next day, because so many things happen in California, including me meeting Ying, who, many of you have seen me from his old video that got like 13 million views that blew up, and that's where the bulk of my subscribers and fan base came from. So yeah, I'm gonna split California up into 2 different videos because just so many things happen. But that is gonna do it for today's video. Like, subscribe, all that. If you want to support me, links are in the description. Thank you, Patreons. Peace out, everybody.